kind of go through a couple things. Today was kind of our B schedule, which is really a schedule when we're preparing for a preseason opponent. So most of the work, all of the work, meetings and everything, were on Indianapolis. I mentioned to you earlier in the week, we'll play 3 phases. It's pretty common. We'll pay attention to really more of the plays than quarters. The first phase would be somewhere between 15 and 20, ideally. Stidham will start in phase 1. Nix will be in phase 2. And then Zach will be in phase 3. Nix might get the final series in phase 1. We just got to see where we're at rep-wise. I don't want to go through every player relative to the phases they're playing here. We'll be here all night. Does that make sense? Any questions?
Hey, Sean, what legs you to go with Jarrett Stidham for the first phase?
I just think right now, certainly, he's been here, his experience. Next week it'll be Nix. And so, but we're focused on this game, and I would say, just with where we're at.
Coach, you talked about Jaleel last year making an impression in these preseason games. How much do you talk to the guys about kind of the opportunity that's in front of them and what they can possibly do?
We just finished going through game day. It's important. If you're not in, it's probably someone else's most important series or most important. So let's stay into the game. I'm not big on the sideline interviews during the game and all of that. They're going to mandate one of those at some point. What game is that? Arizona. So we'll give them our kicker or punter maybe. But anyway, it is important, and this is where guys have a chance to make an impression and kind of take what they've been working on and apply it, in a game like Matter.
Coach, speaking of important, how important is it for you and your team to win these games, these preseason games, or how much importance do you put on that?
I got it win, underlined twice, explanation point. I just think, it's something that we're training to do each week. And now we're going to have our subs, and obviously the most important thing is the 53 cut, and trying to get that right. And so, but also the mindset of winning anything we do.
Yeah, Sean, besides the 53, I think your history is your teams finish a lot better than they start. And last year, you had off to the slow start. Is there anything you've done to adjust?
Yeah, look, we've had we've had some real good teams in the past, started off real strong. I'm really looking at this team compared to a year ago, and yes, like last Saturday was much different than a year ago last Saturday. That practice, we didn't have a scrimmage, but it was in a scrimmage format. So yeah, there are a handful of things. Someone asked me that here, I think a week ago, what are you doing differently? Certainly, it's important for us to start fast, and not putting a definition of start fast, but when we looked, I put the playoff teams on the screen after 5 weeks. I think there was 1, 2, and 3 team, and the rest were 3 wins or better. And so that's important, especially for a young team.
Sean, part of the decision on, Bo, if he gets in for a drive in phase 1, as you call it.
We'll just see where a lot of it is. There's a little trick to it. Are we at play 14 and the ones are still out there? Are we it really depends on how the game unfolds. So we could be on phase 2 on defense and still be in phase 1 on offense because of the pitch count. So we just got to see where we're at.
Hey, Sean, over here. Other than the quarterback job, what are some of the position battles you're really looking forward to seeing on Sunday? And how do you kind of evaluate, how players are doing when they're going against other first-teamers versus maybe other second-teamers? All that?
Yeah, look, they can only, number one, compete against who's on the field. And so, but the tape, not only offensively or defensively, but in the kicking game, begins to, it's part of, and a very important part of, these decisions as we go. I mean, there's 3 preseason games, and And, for a number of players, it's awfully important. And, someone brought up Jaleel, and I remember in San Francisco, midway through that game, thinking there's no way we can get this player to our practice squad, and so we're not going to, by any means, possibly, so every year you just see guys gain confidence and begin to perform, and I think when you put it in a game setting versus a different opponent, I think that's all that weighs heavily.
Sean, kind of following up on Chris and the other guys that aren't quarterbacks, when you look at your linebackers with Cody and Jonas and maybe your corners, is there a scenario, because you know that Pat and Alex, what they can do, where those guys will play together some more than they might in practice?
Yeah, it just depends. There's a few guys that may not play. There's a few guys, we might be in phase one in defense, and I make, a rotation. It's different than, the O-line, the QB, but there's certain position groups that are going to, we're going to have more than 1, 2, 3 receivers playing that first phase. Same way in the back end. We've got a plan. We've gone through every position group and who's going to get roles and reps with each phase. And then in the kicking game, we have a first half, second half unit. So guys might be out of the game on defense or offense and still be involved in the kicking game for the first half. It just has to be coordinated because there are a lot of moving parts.
Sean, do you anticipate any players wearing Guardian caps in games this season with the rule change?
Fair question. I don't know. I don't think so. And yet, it was brought up this offseason at the meetings, and so it wouldn't matter, if someone chose to. In other words, it would be Navy with the same logo and it just a little bigger.
Do you think the league's made progress in protecting?
Absolutely. Because, look, I was on the committee and I would just say within the last 8 years, start with the helmet. I mean, if you guys saw if you saw Randy Gradishaw's helmet compared to Alex Singleton's helmet, the technology's so different. And then how we've taught trying to remove the head from the game, and then the Guardian caps. And so, each year we get a spreadsheet that tells us here are the top 4 helmets. And, those early years were challenging because, the veteran players would get used to. I mean, I think Breeze was in the same helmet, call it. But as time has moved on, these guys are all in these premier helmets, and I think it's there's been a lot of progress. But I don't, I'll be interested to see when the season's over with how many guys chose that, because it would make sense if someone did, and yet if someone didn't, I get it.
Is it too soon for Uwazurike to see some number of game reps, or is he a guy that might?
Fair question. I think it's a tick early, and so I think our plan is to have him work out, travel. We can do some conditioning prior to the game, and then next week at this time, look at him getting a 15 to a certain amount of plays. I think for someone who's been out for a year, I would regret it if we hurried him back and then he had a pulled muscle or something. So I think it's a tick early.